जीलाई धेरै धन्यवाद र यहाँ आउनुभएको पार्टिसिपेन्टहरूलाई पनि धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद। ल्याङ्ग्वेजको हिसाबमा भन्दाखेरि आई विश मैले आफ्नो मातृभाषा गुरुङ तमिल ल्याङ्ग्वेजमा भन्न पाउने भए धेरै राम्रो हुन्थ्यो होला। तर कन्सिडरिङ द्याट मेरो त्यो नलेज चाहिँ मेरो आमा र बाबाको जेनेरेसनमा नै लुज गर्नुभएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि आई बी अडप्टिङ नेपाली एन्ड इङ्ग्लिस। सो यो आजको प्रस्तुति चाहिँ नेपाली र इङ्ग्लिस दुवैमा हुनेछ। धन्यवाद। यो विषय चाहिँ खानाको विषय धेरैलाई इन्ट्रेस्ट लाग्ने विषय पनि हो। स्पेसली लास्ट 2-3 इयर्समा चाहिँ यो खानाको विषयमा धेरै चासो भयो जस्तो लाग्छ र विगत 5 वर्षदेखि चाहिँ म खानामै काम गरिरहेको। मेरो सुरुवात चाहिँ मैले हर्बल सेक्टरबाट गरेको थिएँ। त्योभन्दा अगाडि चाहिँ म न्युजिल्यान्डमा हिस्ट्री पढेर आर्काइभ्समा पनि म नेसनल आर्काइभ्समा काम गरेर त्यसको साथसाथ वाइन मेकिङको छोटो एउटा कोर्स पनि लिएको थिएँ। र नेपालमा आउँदा म हर्बल सेक्टरमा काम गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ मैले धेरै कृषकहरू भेटेँ र कृषकहरू चाहिँ हाम्रो फार वेस्टको कृषकहरू हुनुहुन्थ्यो। उहाँहरूले चाहिँ के सोच्नुभयो भने यो नानी विदेशबाट आउनु भएको छ, उहाँले चाहिँ हामीलाई मार्केट लिङ्केज गरिदिनु सक्नुहुन्छ, उहाँको त्यो क्षमता छ भनेर त्यो आशा गर्नु भएर मलाई त्यस्तो बिन्ती गर्नुभयो उहाँहरूले। त्यो कारणले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ म हर्बल सेक्टरमा उहाँहरूको प्रडक्ट्सहरूलाई मैले कसरी प्रमोट गर्न सक्छु भन्ने हिसाबमा चाहिँ म त्यसरी खानामा चाहिँ लागेको हो। म खानाको इतिहास नै गर्छु भनेर म त्यसरी सुरुवात गरेको होइन। यो कुरा मैले धेरै अरू प्लेटफर्ममा पनि भनिरहेको छु। र यो मैले सुरु चाहिँ जडीबुटी भन्दाखेरि मैले सिस्नुबाट सुरु गरेको हो र सिस्नुको मैले अध्ययन सायद 2 वर्ष जति गरेँ होला। त्यो दौरानमा चाहिँ मैले खाना सिस्नुसँग जोडेको इतिहासहरू धेरै भेटाएँ र त्यो कारणले गर्दाखेरि म अझै गहिरो तरिकाले सिस्नुभन्दा बाहिर पनि त्यसरी अनुसन्धान गर्न सुरु गरेको हो। र विगत 2 वर्षमा चाहिँ यो जुन चाहिँ मैले त्यो सिस्नुबाट सुरु गरेको थिएँ त्यो चाहिँ अलि लार्जर फर्ममा चाहिँ भएको छ। र कस्तो भएको छ भने लास्ट 2 इयर्समा I have been able to do more serious research and present some papers at food symposiums. I presented in 2020 looking into the history of nettle, sisnu. And then more recently, July ma चाहिँ मैले indigenous food कसरी नेपालको ल्यान्डस्केपमा बस्छ हिस्टोरिकली भनेर एउटा पेपर अक्सफोर्ड सिम्पोजियममा पनि प्रेजेन्ट गरेको थियो भर्चुअली। सो अहिले चाहिँ विगत हाम्रो धेरै किताबहरू निस्केको छ लास्ट 2 इयर्समा चाहिँ। र मलाई कस्तो लाग्छ भने यो किताबहरू ले चाहिँ इन्डिजिनियस कुजिन, इन्डिजिनियस रेसिपीलाई पनि समेटेको हुनाले कस्तो तरिकाबाट न्यारेट भइरहेछ त यो इन्डिजिनियस फुडहरू भन्ने विषय चाहिँ मलाई मात्र नभएर इन्डिजिनियस समुदायलाई पनि एकदमै चासोको विषय भएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि आजको प्रस्तुति चाहिँ त्यसरी हुन गएको हो। र म सुरु गर्नु अगाडि चाहिँ द्याट इज द ब्याकग्राउन्ड स्टोरी, बट आई वुड अल्सो लाइक टु प्ले अ स्मल भिडियो। यो भिडियोको अलिकति कन्टेक्स्ट दिँदाखेरि चाहिँ यो भिडियो चाहिँ लाप्राक गोर्खामा चाहिँ रिसेन्टली एउटा कार्यक्रम गरेको थियो। यो कार्यक्रम चाहिँ हामीले ट्रेडिसनल नलेजलाई चाहिँ कसरी प्रमोट गर्ने, ट्रेडिसनल इन्डिजिनियस नलेजबाट चाहिँ भएको स्किल र नलेजलाई चाहिँ त्यहाँको लोकल्सहरूले कसरी उपयोग गर्न सक्छ भनेर एउटा 2 दिनको तालिम जस्तो थियो र त्यसको दौरानमा यो भिडियो गरेको हो। र यो भिडियो चाहिँ गर्नुको मुख्य कारण कस्तो पनि छ भने अहिलेको सिनारियोमा चाहिँ धेरै indigenous youth, particularly गुरुङहरू one major factor being migration विश्वभरि छरिएको छ र विश्वभरि छरिएको यो इन्डिजिनियस ग्रुप तमु ग्रुपहरू यङ जेनेरेसनहरूले चाहिँ आफ्नो भएको नलेज आफ्नो भएको एन्सेस्टर नलेज नपाएको र इन्टरजेनेरेसनल नलेज त्यो कन्सेप्ट जुन चाहिँ इन्डिजिनियस कम्युनिटीमा छ त्यो नभएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि द्याट वाज वान अफ द प्राइमरी मोटिभेसन टु अल्सो क्रिएट दिस भिडियो
Chazolo, मेरो नाम बिन्ती गुरुङ र म तमु आदिवासी जनजाति समूहबाट हो मेरो पुर्खौली घर रम्छु आज चाहिँ हामी यहाँ लाप्रा गोर्खामा छौँ एउटा सानो कार्यक्रम लिएर आएको थियो तर यो कार्यक्रमको व्याख्या गर्नुभन्दा अगाडि म केही अरू कुरा पनि भन्न चाहन्छु म चाहिँ खानाको इतिहासमा काम गर्ने र अनुसन्धान लेख्ने काम पनि गर्छु र आम अल्सो ग्रेजुएट अफ हिस्ट्री अहिलेको कन्टेक्समा चाहिँ हाम्रो माइग्रेसनको कारणले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ we see the indigenous group living all over the world, and we have a lot of young generations while getting many advantages of the modern and Western life. And many I see are also trying to uncover where they come from, who they are, trying to make a sense of where they belong. And part of my story is also not very different from their story. So, it is my hope that Tamu indigenous group benefit everyone is able to take benefit out of this work that is being done at the moment. र यो कार्यक्रममा जुन पनि हामीले कम्पोनेन्ट देखायो ब्ल्याङ्केट विभिङ कसरी हुन्छ वुलहरू लिएर कोटहरू लिएर आएर महिलाहरू कसरी इन्भल्भ भएर कसरी त्यो ब्ल्याङ्केट क्रिएट हुन्छ भन्ने प्रोसेस चाहिँ इट वाज अ भेरी कन्सियस चोइस फर अस टु इन्क्लुड द्याट बिकज त्यसले चाहिँ हाम्रो गुरुङ हेरिटेज गुरुङ ट्रेडिसनल नलेजको बारेमा धेरै कुरा सङ्केत गर्छ रियली ग्रेटफुल द्याट यो नलेजले मैले आइ एम एबल टु also through this work I'm able to share with a wider audience, wider community, and particularly to the many Tamil new generations who may not know about where their ancestor knowledge is coming from. र जुन चाहिँ यो weaving कुरा गर्यो वुलबाट हैन शिप वुलबाट जुन पनि weaving को कुरा गर्यो त्यो चाहिँ हाम्रो एन्सेस्टरहरू शेपर्ड्सहरू हुनुहुन्थ्यो गुरुङहरू उहाँहरू गोठ चाड्दै लेकतिर जानुहुन्थ्यो त्यो लाइफस्टाइलले चाहिँ वाइडर मिनिङ के ल्याउँछ भन्दाखेरि त त्यो लाइफस्टाइल इज कनेक्टेड विथ द फरेस्ट बिकज फरेस्ट एन्ड नलेज अबाउट मेडिसिनल हर्ब्स किनभने उहाँहरू गोठ चाडेर जानु भन्दाखेरि खानपानको लागि उहाँहरू जङ्गल जमिनसँग एकदमै हाइली डिपेन्डेन्ट हुनुहुन्थ्यो र फरेस्टमा भएको जडीबुटीहरूको बारेमा उहाँलाई प्रशस्त ज्ञानहरू हुन्थ्यो र अहिले हामी यति क्लाइमेट चेन्जको कुरा गरिरहेछौँ ग्लोबल वार्मिङको कुरा गरिरहेछौँ र त्यसमा कुरा गर्दाखेरि हाम्रो आफ्नै कम्युनिटीमा हेर्दा आफ्नै एन्सेस्टर पाथवेजहरू हेर्दा हाम्रो हेरिटेजमा हेर्दाखेरि इट्स अ भेरी कन्ट्रडिक्टरी न्यारेटिभ द्याट वी सी किनभने हाम्रो एन्सेस्टरहरूले त यति फरेस्टको रक्षा गरेर राख्नु भएको मान्छेहरू हो प्रकृतिले हामीलाई यति कुराहरू दिन्छ होइन एन्ड फरेस्ट हेज अलमोस्ट गिभन अ लट टु द इन्डिजिनियस पिपल दे हेभ रिलाइड our ancestors have relied on the forest for the herbs, for the food, and the food heritage. Only when we're talking about back to the nature, forest food campaigns, well, संसारभरि यस्तो क्याम्पेनहरू आउँदा त हाम्रो पुर्खाहरूले अलरेडी गरिरहेको कुरा हो र many of us what a pity that many of us do not know about this. अहिले हामी यहाँ लाप्रामा पनि कुरा गर्दाखेरि कोट राख्ने अहिले 250बाट अहिले 10-15 मात्रै छ भनेर भनिरहेछ र यो टुट्ने बित्तिकै के हुन्छ त र हिमाल जस्तो ल्यान्डस्केपमा बस्नको लागि उनीहरू they have always found sustainable ways of looking after themselves, looking after the forest, looking after the land and territories, and this is a knowledge that every Guru person and every Guru new generation, wherever they are in the world, should know about. in fact, actually, your knowledge say, we hope that it serves as an inspiration to all the other people across the world how forests should be taken care of, especially within the context of climate change and global warming. Exploiting the resources and forest materials for personal gain and for trade, and we have had enough of this.
As you have seen in the video, yo आजको series चाहिँ हामी, even though we are talking about food, what we have to understand when looking at indigenous community, with an example of Binti Gurung community, is the fact that it is a system, it is a philosophy. Each of the things are interconnected. Food भने पनि हामीले, as we have seen, it's connected with the forest. And forest बाट, and especially looking historically of the Tamu history, is because our ancestor profession, or Gurung's ancestor profession, was herding. The ancestors were shepherds. So all these other things are related. I'll come back to that because it's important to address the interconnected nature of the indigenous life. And particularly taking an example of Tamu, I'll do that later on. But first, Nepalको हामीले agriculture र food सम्बन्धी हेर्यो भने चाहिँ for a very long time हाम्रो we've always been dependent on agriculture to survive. Agriculture हरियो देश हरियो वर्ण देश के अरे हाम्रो धन भन्ने त्यो expression पनि छँदैछ. And when we are looking at agriculture as a way of sustaining and livelihood, we see that subsistence farming, as you've seen in the video, in Gorkha also, people are still doing that to survive. And another tradition that we see historically also is foraging tradition. So यो दुईटा combinationले चाहिँ we can see हाम्रो food culture within the historical framework, these two traditions have always existed. And with that, what we can also see is that people have a lot of local knowledge about the plants and all these other characteristics related with farming, growing food, and we still have a diversity of food crops. In fact, actually, I was looking at one of the government site, and there was a number of food products that were categorized as one of the type of stuff that type of crops and the spices that's grown in the different climatic areas of Nepal. So we have this one reality where agriculture has been a way of sustaining and has been sustaining. That's one reality. And on the other side, what a lot of our studies is also indicating is that हाम्रो नेपालमा चाहिँ अहिले 4.6 million people are still food insecure. Food insecurity is still a big thing. So when we look a little deeper into the reasons of food insecurity, there is a lot of information that's indicating due to population growth and the kind of urbanization and development that is occurring, that is leading to food insecurity. त्यस्तो खाले हाम्रो studiesहरुले indicate गरिरहेछ. So we are sitting on two different kind of realities, and now what we see is a number of food cookbooks that are out in publication. So when I was looking at this cookbooks, we have just this year alone हाम्रो चाहिँ 3 books निस्केको छ. Timur, I think Rana cookbook was published last year, and Ela, I think by Santosh Shah, has been published. And one book that is missing in this picture is called Vegan, Himalayan Vegan भन्ने पनि एउटा किताब निस्केको छ. I was unable to access that. I think it's still being sold, only being sold in online. And I understand that I think the writer is based somewhere abroad. And then it's important to connect with the book or the video, which I'll do that later on. So we have this growing number of cookbooks that's coming out, and I think as someone looking into food history and food writings and food publication, I was very interested in what is actually happening. You know, what is going on here? Like we have all these different realities where agriculture, people are depending on agriculture to feed themselves. They are growing their own food. There are this local knowledge, local people, you know, and a lot of these rural people have this abundance of knowledge that they possess. And then there is also this food insecurity that is happening, and yet at the same time we have a number of cookbooks of varying motivations and intentions that is coming out. So त्यसलाई यसो के लाएर हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ कस्तो पनि लाग्छ भने एउटा रेस जस्तो भइरहेछ हैन हाम्रो यो कुकबुक पब्लिकेसनमा a drive to document Nepali recipes. So what is actually going on behind this feeling of having to document Nepali recipes? भन्दा त Nepalese public preferences have drastically changed towards global food and Western food, and there is this kind of huge void of Nepali food and recipes. त्यसले गर्दाखेरि some of the motivations can be seen to want to document this Nepali recipes haru. त्यो एउटा भयो र अर्को चाहिँ also urban populations haru, middle class populations haruमा we can also have this kind of we can also see this sense of awareness, health र connection with food, local food, हामी पहिला पुर्खाले खाने food, गाउँघरमा खाने food healthy रहेछ भन्ने एउटा sense of awareness पनि एउटा we can see that. And along with that, what we also see a personal desire to also and a need to express and promote एउटा collective cultural heritage. And along with that, we see a sense of like personal branding, like, you know, through food writings. And your food writings haruमा चाहिँ indigenous perspective कसरी आउँछ भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ यो बुकहरुले चाहिँ they touch upon indigenous recipes, indigenous food cultures. And for me as an indigenous person and also a person, someone who's looking into food history, I was really interested how this your writersहरुले किताबहरुमा कसरी indigenous storiesहरुलाई कसरी relate गरिरहेछ त, कसरी portray गरिरहेछ, अनि who are in these narrations, अनि कस्तो खाले स्टोरीजहरु आइरहेछ भन्ने I think that was one of the things that I really wanted to investigate. So we have यो पाँचवटा बुकमा चाहिँ I'll be looking only at the first three books because यो तीनटा किताबले चाहिँ they really touch upon the history and culture and so when we are looking at these books, what became so clear to me, especially looking at the recipes, the way how it was portrayed was Rana cookbookमा हेर्दाखेरि उहाँले जसरी रेसिपिजहरुलाई हाइलाइट गर्नुभएको छ, Rana cookbookले चाहिँ Rana householdको हिस्टोरिकली र अहिले करेन्टली अडप्ट गर्ने र चलाइराख्ने प्र्याक्टिस्ड रेसिपिजहरूको एउटा कलेक्सन किताब निकाल्नु भएको हो र यो किताबहरू बाहिर पब्लिकली निस्किँदाखेरि आई वाज क्वाइट क्युरियस इन द सेन्स द्याट कसैले केही भन्ला कमेन्ट गर्ला यो ठिक थिएन यो किताब यस्तो हो भनेर बट I don't think I heard anyone actually comment anything, no criticism at all. I mean, it's a good book, but there are some recipes that actually do not belong to the Rana food heritage. There is one particular recipe, I felt that the book actually did pretty good job in documenting the recipes. And she has done a number of good things, which I'll highlight later on. But there is also a recipe which is not well researched. It actually belongs to the indigenous community. उहाँले एउटा fiddle head for निगुरोको साग भनेर मनसुनसँग कनेक्ट गर्नुभएको छ तर she has not given any indications as त्यो कसरी आउँछ त्यो it's fiddle head for niguro is something that actually grows in the forest. Indigenous communities have always had connection with the forest because they have because of the historical condition that would impose on them, they had to depend on the forest for food. And this foraging culture but ago tradition ho it's something that do not belong to Rana food heritage. तर उहाँको किताबहरुमा हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ what she has done is she has when highlighting the recipe उहाँले चाहिँ in the sense of त्यो recipe को ownership चाहिँ उहाँले address गर्नुभएको छ which was really good because none of the other cooks books that I had a look does that which is highly problematic. So यो किताबको चाहिँ त्यो those were the things that immediately that came into my mind. And then we also, in comparison to that, मैले यो side by side किन राखेको भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ अर्को चाहिँ हाम्रो यो राणाको book on the left and Timur on the right and Timur मा चाहिँ धेरै indigenous groupsहरु र हाम्रो ब्राह्मण क्षेत्रीय कम्युनिटीको रेसिपिजहरु कम्पाइल गरेर I don't know 100 and something recipes उहाँले त्यो किताबमा निकाल्नु भएको छ र what's problematic within this framework is that उहाँले indigenous community को cuisinesहरु recipesहरु लेख्नु भए पनि उहाँले चाहिँ त्यो रेसिपिज कहाँबाट आएको र उहाँ त्यो रेसिपिजको ओनरशिपको केही पनि व्याख्या त छोड्दिनु उहाँले एक्नोलेज पनि गर्नु भएको छैन र another thing that I found really problematic with this book is the fact that उहाँले historical contextहरु दिनु भएको छ तर historical contextमा चाहिँ we have no references, no bibliography. We do not know where all these claims that he's making, that the author is making, is available for us to look into. But the most problematic thing I think is of this book is the ownership of the recipes that is completely missing from the book. र उहाँले चाहिँ के पनि गर्नु भएको छ भन्यो भने I don't know how many of us here know about indigenous communities. तर नेपालमा चाहिँ at least 59 indigenous communities have been legally recognized by the state. We have maybe 115 in total. And 59 indigenous community मा उहाँले ह्यान्डफुललाई मात्र पिक गर्नु भएर उहाँले कम्युनिटीजहरुलाई मर्ज गर्नु भएको छ on the basis of what I'm not really sure, because Magar र Gurung have been lumped together, and there is one particular recipe, pork को recipe उहाँले मगरहरुले खाने भनेर त्यो एउटै क्याटेगोरीमा राख्नु भएको छ विच इज भेरी प्रब्लमेटिक इन द सेन्स बिकज गुरुङहरूको लागि पोर्क एन्सेस्टरली त्यो नचढ्ने चलाउन नहुने कुरा हो आई स्टिल रिमेम्बर मेरो आमाले पनि भनिरहेको कुरा हो कि अहिले वेन वी आर ग्रोइङ अप मेरो बजेले चाहिँ पोर्कको मासु खानु हुँदैन घरमा छिराउनु हुँदैन भनेर बाहिर बाहिर मात्र पकाउने गर्ने त्यस्तो गरिरहेको थियो र पोर्कको मासुलाई यसरी मगर र गुरुङको कुजिनमा क्याटेगोराइज गर्दाखेरि आई थिङ्क द्याट बिकम्स क्वाइट प्रब्लमेटिक र अरू रिसर्च फुड हिस्ट्रीको रिसर्च गर्नु भने आई थिङ्क इट्स नट एन इजी टास्क easy in the sense that the length of time that actually it takes to do research, to verify things, it's a process, you know, and we have 59 groups, more than that, I said 115 in total, 59 only legally recognized. Ra eutai community ma I've been working 2 years lagyo hola malai that yo forest ra Gurung and indigenous groups ko connection garera foraging culture aउँछ भन्ने र how that foraging culture sits within the global framework भनेर हेर्नको लागि र and in order to do that I went to 2 indigenous school also national or international level ma so the amount of time it takes to make connection with all these things it's incredible and it's so short time I think it was very rushed so even अहिले पनि मैले यसरी भन्दाखेरि I do not I'm still learning I'm a practitioner I research I write but I'm also learning a lot and मसँग पनि I do not possess the knowledge about अरू कम्युनिटीको food habitsहरू food recipesहरू food storiesहरू forget about the history you know मलाई के recipes छ भनेर पनि मलाई त्यो verify गर्न पनि I still have to depend on other communities in fact actually यो बुकमा थारू फुडहरू पनि छ लिम्बू राई लिम्बूको फुडहरू पनि छ र थारूहरूको मलाई त्यस्तो मलाई अलि मात्र थाहा छ just because I've been doing a little bit of superficial kind of study अनि त्यसको लागि I had to verify with the Tharu community so I was having a chat with someone from the Tharu community यो किताबमा यस्तो छ what do you think of these recipes भनेर fact check गर्ने बेलामा धेरै number of things came a number of flaws actually was pointed out to me which I think it's very important for people to know linguistically problem छ भनेर भन्नुभयो हैन regional based Tharus have different names that they give to the recipes भनेर भन्नुभयो the picture I think there was one particular recipe ठेकुवा भनेर लेख्नु भएको छ actually त्यो ठेकुवा हैन that is actually said something else which हामीले सन्तोष शाहको किताबमा हेर्दाखेरि he has actually described it with the right name so त्यस्तो खाले problemsहरू चाहिँ we see in this book but however in saying that I think the author has done incredible job in whatever way he did the research to at least compile and document I don't know how many 126 or 130 recipes तर उहाँले चाहिँ the major flaw is that he did not consult with the indigenous communities को recipe लाई लिएर उहाँले त्यो recipe कहाँबाट कसको थ्रुबाट आएको भनेर पनि उहाँले त्यो acknowledgement चाहिँ दिनु भएको छैन that is the fundamental mistake of this book I think I think you can see Sargemba यो Himalayan landscape but आउने एउटा recipe हो pig blood sausage with wild lichen yang bean भन्यो होला उहाँले अनि अर्को चाहिँ हाम्रो फाल्गी छ अनि फाल्गीलाई शेर्पा फुड भनेर उहाँले प्रमोट गरिराख्नु भएको थियो हुन त it's a food that सुनवारहरूले पनि खाने food हो coming from the Solukhumbu area at least he has said that Sherpa and the neighboring communities mainly living in the lower mountainous region make a hearty winter stew भनेर भन्नु भएको छ त्यसको पनि एउटा छुट्टै प्रोसेस छ फाल्गीको पनि when talking to a Sunwar women who actually have been grew up making falgi she said she has described the process in a different manner than how it is recorded in this book So like I said, who are the makers and the creators is completely missing here, does not address that fact. which actually in Rana cookbook, at least the author has indicated where the recipe has come from or whose kitchen it has come from. At least cook lai pani उहाँले चाहिँ acknowledge चाहिँ गर्नुभएको छ कि यो फलाना कुक यो घरको फलाना कुकले चाहिँ यो रेसिपी दिनुभएको भनेर. अनि when we come to हाम्रो सन्तोषजीको एला, it's a really good book. I was very impressed by certain things that he has done. He's very sensitive towards the communities whose recipe he's addressing. That was a very good thing about the way how he was narrating. Although I have to say that on the historical and the political aspect of the food, but knowing that he's a chef and technical side, but he wanted to kind of stay within his domain. I think that makes it maybe acceptable. But yeah, cultural context say I think it's missing. Like how I say niguroko saag भन्नु भएको छ उहाँले त्यो पनि I think he connects it with the season. I think he doesn't talk about how it originates from the indigenous communities, connects with the foraging culture that we have. And the kind of connection that indigenous community have with the nature and forest and the significant cultural factor. And vegetarian dish bhanera also he has pointed out to a lot of recipes and described the vegetarian culture as something that was that has been brought on by the necessity. Meat afford गर्न नसक्ने र vegetarian खान परेको भन्ने एउटा component. So he does not really touch upon the Hindu or caste based preferences over meat and non-meat त्यो narrative लाई चाहिँ उहाँले completely skip गर्नुभएको छ. So we see all this like indigenous knowledge and where are the indigenous people in the books. I mean really when we are looking at the reality in the ground, indigenous महिलाहरुको I've been looking at indigenous women and indigenous knowledge and food for the last 1.5 years, and ground reality is completely different, you know. In a paper that I presented this year, I came across this one paper that was done in eastern Nepal. Rai Sherpa womenहरूको cultural habits, food habits हेरिरहेको थियो यो writerले. अनि त्यसमा चाहिँ it was pointed out the foraging tradition लाई चाहिँ point out गर्नुभएको थियो, and she was also looking at how Rai women still suffer discrimination from higher caste of Brahmin and Kshetris by saying that the Rai food habits are very inferior, jungali ho yo, backward, primitive ho bhanera. They still, that's one of the kind of stigma and discrimination they still have to face. And the resulting consequences of that is that people want to stay away from those kind of food habits because of the kind of social stigma that is attached with that kind of food habits. And one thing that resulting from that is also a process of संस्कृताइजेसन भनेर त्यसरी पनि भन्नु भएको थियो. र संस्कृताइजेसनलाई हेर्दाखेरि this is something that I also looked at the paper I presented at the symposium, food symposium in July. नेपालमा चाहिँ historically, I'll come back to that later, but historically there's been a lot of conditions, even in the legal code, conditions have been written placed in such a way that have been very harmful to indigenous people and their food habits. र 1980s मा चाहिँ यो 1950s देखि I think the term संस्कृताइजेसन was coined by someone, I think a sociologist from India. 1980s मा चाहिँ त्यसको के इफेक्टहरु देखिरह्यो भने नेपालमा चाहिँ धेरै कास्टहरु, indigenous कास्टहरु, स्पेशली इभन हिमालयन कास्टहरुले पनि आफ्नो फूड ह्याबिट्सहरु, मीटहरु छोड्न थालेर they started mimicking and adopting the food habits of the upper class. So this sense of being ashamed of one's food habit resulted in loss also. So reality for the indigenous women in the ground is the fact that they possess all this knowledge about food and plants and when it's available and all this information. So they basically are the knowledge holder of the food. Yeah, so indigenous womenहरूको reality चाहिँ कस्तो छ भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ especially particularly looking at rural indigenous women, they also carry the extra burden, no? Because उनीहरू घर पनि सम्हाल्न पर्यो, बच्चालाई हेर्न पर्यो, हैन, गोठ पनि जान पर्यो, फार्ममा पनि काम गर्नु पर्यो, खाना पनि बनाउन पर्यो. But one thing what results out of all this struggle is the fact that they possess the knowledge, you know. खेतमा कहिले गएर काम गर्ने के हुन्छ, अब त्यस्तो knowledge हामीसँग हुँदैन. Not particularly me. I had to go to school, I had to do research in order to find this kind of information. गाउँ कहिले रोप्ने, like हुन्छ नि millet कहिले हुन्छ, त्यो information त उहाँहरुसँग already हुन्छ because of all these struggles and the kind of traditional structure मा बसेको भएर the roles that have been adopted on or burdened on them, because of this they gain this local knowledge. And indigenous women also, because of this knowledge that they have, they also pass it over to the children. And intergenerational concept चाहिँ indigenous communities मा it's a very important concept. And because oral tradition बाट आउने मान्छेहरू भएको कारणले गर्दा, and sadly the video that I showed that one particular music was missing. Music भन्दा नि त्यो गाउँघरको महिलाहरूले चाहिँ गाएको चाहिँ त्यो एउटा क्लिप जस्तो अगाडि चाहिँ थियो. But सङ्ग्सहरूको थ्रुबाट, फोकलोर्सहरूको थ्रुबाट उहाँहरूले धेरै ज्ञानहरू नेक्स्ट जेनेरेसनलाई पास गर्ने पनि थियो. So they are this knowledge holder, and which the knowledge that they pass to the children, that is how we become familiar with food, with food culture. हाम्रो food के रहेछ त भनेर त्यो त्यसरी हाम्रो intergenerational knowledge को थ्रुबाट हामीले पाउने हाम्रो sense of belonging कहाँ आउँछ भन्दा त यसरी आउँछ. त्यो पाएन भने we are lost. And historical context, like I said, this is one of the legal code that I found in Muluke N, which basically says sacred thread wearing brahmanहरूलाई चाहिँ alcohol खुलायो भने knowingly by force or for no other reason than the person wearing the person who thread wearing consumes or any other forbidden substance which leads to his caste degradation, he shall be imprisoned for a year. To khulaune मान्छेलाई चाहिँ basically he loses his property and he also becomes imprisoned. And त्यो मुलुके ऐनमा चाहिँ there are a number of things that have been addressed regarding meat eating and alcohol, and how a number of castes have been labeled as matauli. I don't know, it was also something that I discovered, and when I was having a chat with my family members, they also did not know that matwali actually came from because matine class of people who overdrank alcohol and could not resist themselves. So that's how this very derogatory term matwali was came into function, associating with a particular indigenous alcohol drinking category of people. So historical context त्यस्तो छ फुडमा indigenous community सँग, and what we have in the present context is loss of knowledge. हाम्रो present generationsहरू, because of the historical condition that was put upon the indigenous people, and also the ongoing social stigma, like how I said, right, women still suffer stigmatization and discrimination from higher caste for going and getting food from the forest and foraging, being called jungali. I think people stay away from this kind of thing. So there is a disconnect with people who have been practicing it and the current generation. So there is certainly a loss of knowledge. And for someone like me, and the people that I work with, and also the community, because it's something that must be done with in consultation with the community. That is one of the essence of indigenous life. It's a very, very difficult task. Just this year alone, highlighted two very specific events where intergenerational programs were conducted. One was done in Pokhara in August. And the photo that you see is also part of that. A lot of children, young girls, they did not know where the food come, what is their food. One person, when I was talking to her, she said, "म त यो कार्यक्रम त्यो नाच्ने गाउने कार्यक्रम मात्रै होला, यस्तो सिक्न पाउने मौका पाउँछ भनेर मैले सोचेको पनि थिएन, मलाई त अल्छी लागेको थियो, अहिले सुन्दै जाँदाखेरि त कस्तो इन्ट्रेस्टिङ लाग्यो भनेर she said." So that is the situation and the reality of indigenous youth and food culture currently. And अर्को एउटा इभेन्ट पनि गराएको थियो. This was done with my friend here and sister Hausala. यो recently गरेको काम हो. Kathmanduमा पनि गर्नुपर्छ भनेर, and because हाम्रो indigenous women, they are the knowledge holder, they are the ones who have been struggling with their multiple roles that they have to play in the household and in the family. I think it was the right way for us to involve an elder person who also shared her knowledge. She gave a recipe. She also introduced the context and the surrounding stories of food. And for me, I think because I'm still learning, it was I'm really, really grateful to her. So larger picture हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ यो indigenous को नेपालको situation मात्रै होइन. I recently came across this also article by this person, Vanessa Watts, from I think a university, I think in Canada maybe, how she says that there is a long history in the academic of treating indigenous people and communities as objects of study, or as holders of knowledge or information that can be extracted or mined from them, instead of freely shared and contributed. And yes, from all the things that I've observed, the way how the cookbooks have been introduced, I feel, and this is something that people within the indigenous community share the sentiment that the knowledge has been extracted. So in the end, as a concluding thought, what I would like to share is that, so we have all this bunch of knowledge. We are living in this geographical proximity. So के उनीहरुको knowledge चाहिँ हामीले के गर्नै छुनै नहुने हो. I mean हामीले investigate गर्न नहुने, हामी involve गर्न नमिल्ने हो भन्ने sentiment पनि होला कसैको योलाई address गर्दाखेरि. No, it is not like that, you know. Indigenous knowledge, particularly indigenous food, especially Gurungकै example भएको दिँदाखेरि, we are always inviting people. घरमा के पाकेछ, साथी त्यहाँ आइरहेछ, no matter कुन चाहिँ indigenous community को होस् या बाहुन क्षेत्री होस्, आउनुस् घरमा, हाम्रो घरमा दाल पाकेछ, भात पाकेछ, आउनुस्, जे पाकेछ खानु भन्ने त्यो हाम्रो त्यो sense of hospitality छ. So we are not saying that you cannot be involved, but involve हुनु त come as an ally, you know. हाम्रोबाट extract गर्ने, हाम्रोबाट लिने त्यस्तो काम चाहिँ नगर्नु होला. I think that is something that has been going on for a number of decades, and what we are asking our non-indigenous friends are to come and try help us in building us, you know. Historically यति हामी माथि oppression भएको छ, you know. Just looking at as an example, I gave the Muluke and the ongoing discrimination that is still happening So come and join us and help us. Help people like us who are actually working in the ground and trying to investigate, do research, trying to find out about our lost heritage. Come and help us to build it together, And by saying that, I would like to stop here. Thank you.